The best prep a young prepper can have in mind for 2023 is fiscal preparedness. Because if you're not prepared to cover your expenses, you'll be left scrambling if disaster strikes. If you don't have money saved up for unexpected events, like a job loss or health issue, you could find yourself in a tight spot and nothing else matters. If a catastrophe hits, how will you pay for food and shelter? How will you buy gas for your vehicle? You might think things like these don't happen often enough to worry about them, but that's exactly why it's important to prepare. You never know when something might happen that would affect your finances or the finances of someone close to you. The only way to truly be prepared is to plan ahead from the very beginning. If you're a young prepper, it's never too early to start preparing for the future. It's also never too late. We all have to face the fact that the world is changing and we need to be ready for what's coming. It's important to remember that being financially prepared also doesn't simply mean holding on to tons of money. It means having a plan for how you'll pay for things when they're needed. You can do this by saving up some cash now or by other means that we'll get into in a bit. Another important point, the vast majority of you live in urban or suburban environments. That is reality. Maybe you want a rural farm in the future, but you aren't there yet. If you're a young person, don't worry. Build up that financial power before shifting it. So here are a few things you can do to start making sure you are prepared financially. First, make sure you always have an emergency fund. Figure out exactly how much money you need to make each month, then aim for 3 months worth of living expenses at least. Put away 10% or extra windfall money into a separate savings account. This is a great way to save for unexpected expenses, something like a flat tire. Here's a personal example. I have a spare tire, I have a blowout kit, I have toe straps, I have all that good stuff. But one morning on my way to work, I heard a rhythmic clicking sound coming from down below when I had my window rolled down, and I knew I had to check for a nail or a screw. Lo and behold, there it was. To make it worse, it went through the sidewall, so plugging it and continuing on wasn't even a good option. It had to be replaced. Discount Tire won't take gold or silver coins. I can't barter rice or cuts of frozen beef for a pair of new tires. If I don't have credit, which is the only alternative to cash that they will take, I would be utterly screwed. Another prime example was when I broke my back. Needless to say, not a lot of moving got done the first month. Not a lot of showering either. It hurt and it was terrible. Anyway, it was safe to say my income from working a job was non-existent. If you think emergency unemployment or aid would save you in this regard, you'll be introduced to the speed of government and find out that whoever is controlling your monthly due dates don't care a whole lot. They just need you to pay up. So waiting around for a magic check won't cut it when you're going hungry. If you want to make sure that nothing unexpected can catch up with you, start saving now. Begin saving small amounts every month and build up an emergency fund as quickly as possible so that no matter what happens next year or any year, you'll be ready. A state of alert readiness at a moment's notice is the goal for prepping. So if you're prepared for the rare scenarios but unequipped to handle the everyday emergency, realign your priorities and do some triage work ASAP. Second, if you want to be able to save more money on a regular basis for the long term, try looking into investing. The best way I've found is to start small. Set up a Roth IRA so that by the time retirement rolls around, you'll have some money for when it's time to stop working, or maybe even before then. Index funds are a great way to diversify your portfolio. They give you exposure to multiple markets without having to buy multiple stocks or invest in individual companies yourself, which can get expensive fast. Individual stocks tend to offer higher returns than other investments, but they do come with more risk. If the company goes belly up or the stock drops in value, your investment will take a hit too. This marks an important difference. What many people assume is investing is actually speculation. In other words, it's gambling. Investing is doing your own due diligence and selecting something like a blue chip stock with a decent dividend return. These tend to be companies that won't be going anywhere anytime soon for obvious reasons like Amazon, Walmart, Coca-Cola, etc. Cutting out the individual pick and choose and going all in with an index fund like VTI is a more stable long-term strategy. It's not going to be as risky as investing in an individual company because it gives you exposure to many companies at once. So if one company goes down, another may go up. Nothing is ever guaranteed with absolute certainty in the stock market except this. Time in the market in one of these juggernaut companies is a win as long as you pay attention to trends in lifestyle or technology and shift your money to accommodate those changes. Third, if you've been getting involved in the prepper community, there's no doubt you'll run into your friendly neighborhood gold and silver bug. They typically will be a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the history of money, fiat, and economic models. They will probably not like the stock angle I talked about, but young guys and gals do not get hyper-focused and lose leverage where it applies to you. The main thing you need to know is that precious metals aren't necessarily investments. They preserve your buying power. If you're buying precious metals with the expectation of things going to the moon, you are a speculator. Remember, there is a big difference between speculating and investing. I've been into precious metals as a youngster as part of my parents' culture, and there have been huge runs in the market that made people extremely wealthy. I will not discount that. However, a lot of people are getting into metals for the wrong reasons and are making the same mistakes a lot of people I knew in 2010 to 2013 made. Liquidity can be an issue as well. If you need the money immediately, be prepared to take a haircut selling it quick to a pawnbroker. You can sell it to other individuals, but if time is critical, you won't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect buyer to come around. You also have to store it, bringing a whole host of security issues. There are many reasons why gold and silver would be useful, however, that would be its own video. If you like the history of money, having something cool that also keeps its relative value, then keep a small amount of money here. The fourth financial prepping tip, learn a marketable skill and become master of your chosen profession. Whether you are a white-collar professional or a blue-collar tradesman, the very best in any field command high prices that people will not hesitate to pay for if they're able to. When things were shut down in 2020, there were tons of people who offered work on things since businesses weren't open. The amount of guerrilla barbering and shade tree mechanic services spread through word of mouth is an example. Consulting via Zoom and cell phones was another. Being savvy enough to read the laws, their requirements and limitations was a huge part of the legal field as well. Master your crafts, become marketable, and be known for some useful service. The fifth thing to keep in mind is budgeting. Budgeting is important for preppers because it helps you take control of your finances in order to get things you need and want. You've got to break down your expenses into different categories like food, housing, and other costs like medical expenses. You can then calculate how much per month you need to spend on each category. This is going to be your minimum calculation, but don't plan on using that number. Give yourself a little cushion so that if something comes up like an emergency, you'll have some extra cash set aside. Whether you track your budget on an app or on a physical notebook, it's important that you track your expenses. This also helps keep your expenses in check, where you can see what is a luxury versus a necessity, which ties into the sixth thing that you can do in order to save money for the things that matter: living a frugal lifestyle. But I don't mean living a life devoid of anything nice. First off, frugal people tend to be more thoughtful about their purchases. They don't just buy things without thinking about them first. They consider whether or not they really need something before they spend money on it. They also pay attention to prices and discounts when shopping. They know when items are at their lowest price point and when stores offer deals, so they can get the most bang for their buck. That means they don't just buy whatever is cheapest. They look around and make sure they're getting the best deal possible. Effective frugality requires a certain amount of discernment in order to make the most of a deal. The lucky number 7 thing you need to keep in mind when increasing your financial power: the C word. Credit. Credit is important for young people to build. It's the one thing that will impact where you can live, if you can buy a car, if you can make major decisions that involve large amounts of money and even certain kinds of jobs. The problem compounds the older you get, as it's becoming increasingly unusual for a man over 30 to have no credit history at all. It's impossible to live without credit in the modern world. The key is to be responsible with credit. As long as you don't frivolously blow through the money in your accounts, buying things on a whim, especially luxury items, and play the game responsibly, you won't get into trouble. Of course, the rising costs of living are putting everyone under a strained time, but imagine not having the leverage of credit to cover an emergency or a full tank of gas when it's absolutely needed. Like everything else related to this lifestyle, it pays off to be responsible and to do your own due diligence and know what the best practices are. Right now, finances aren't even really on the radar in the prepping community, and that needs to shift too. As it stands right now, you cannot survive without money, and this community needs to pay attention to this blind spot. Simply put, it costs money to purchase your initial off-the-shelf preps. You need money to upgrade those tools, pay for classes to learn how to manipulate those tools, maintain and fuel those items. You still have to buy food, and if you grow your own, you still had to have been able to buy the farm, the livestock, the feed, and the knowledge to maintain that lifestyle. Ultimately, money is the power you can exert on your surroundings. The goal isn't to accumulate and hoard wealth for the sake of it, but in order to afford and achieve the level of preparedness and self-sufficiency you feel is appropriate in order to be prepared for your local emergencies. There's of course the school of thought in the prepping community that money doesn't matter when shtf and everything collapses, and that's completely true. That's been repeated since the 1960s. The Planet of the Apes is one of the first future dystopian nightmare movies to hit mainstream. But you, young and middle-aged individuals that are watching my video, I have a question. Are you able to see where these doomsayers could be? What levels of influence they could have if they not only worked on their preps, but also helped shape the cultural landscape through their prosperity as well? Prep for the end of the world, sure. But also prep as if the world will still be around in 3 days, 3 months, 3 years, or 3 decades, because it most likely will be. Be prepared, be wise. The future of our people and the future of those you love are impacted by the decisions you make today. They are counting on you, even if you haven't met them yet. Until the next video, be good, stay safe, and have a good one.